Revelation 12:11. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives, even unto death.
The things that have been inflicted onto me, the things that I've inflicted onto myself, the Lord healed me completely.
All things, all beings submit to him. I could speak the name of Jesus and that evil would leave.
All I could feel was a peace and him say, "Not yet, daughter."
I called his name, and within a second, my breathing was restored and I could breathe normally again. I could not believe it.
And I saw Jesus interceding for me. And he said to me, "I've been protecting you from things you never even knew about."
Martyria. Welcome to episode 18, Holly's Martyria, Reiki, and Spiritual Psychosis. Psalm 90 reminds us to number the days of our lives. And Holly had been doing just that since she'd become a Christian, documenting her everyday experience. And at the time of recording, she had been a Christian for just over 30 days. So join us now as we have natural talk about Holly's supernatural walk.
I guess I grew up in Australia. I was originally born in New Zealand, and so was the rest of my family. I've got two brothers, and we all moved to Australia when I was under 1 year old, so pretty much Australian. And I grew up living on the beach. I had a really beautiful childhood, really. My parents weren't religious, but they definitely were spiritual. So I remember being quite young, like even the age of 4 or 5, I would have crystals. I specifically had this little silver angel, and I would call it Angel, and I would talk to it all the time. And if I ever lost something, I would say, like, to my brothers, "Don't worry, I'm going to get Angel. She'll find it for you." And I would talk to this little silver thing and say, "Angel, like, where is this?" So, yeah, I always had this sense of talking to something else. There was never any God or Christianity, but yeah, my mind was open in that sense. And my parents never really spoke about God or a creator or anything like that until I think they must have, around the age of 10 or 11, I think they discovered Reiki. I don't know if you know what that is, but yeah, it's like energy healing. I think it derives from like this Japanese man. Anyway, so they started doing Reiki healing and going to courses like that. And then I started going to some as well. So around the age, I think I did my first Reiki course when I was about 12. I was still in high school. So I was very open to that sort of stuff. And then around, 13, I started drinking at a really young age, smoking, like smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, not like hard drugs, but I would smoke weed, and stuff like that. And honestly, like my parents would help me roll a joint. Like they taught me how to roll a joint. And so, I felt a little bit safer in that sense, like smoking weed with them. It was all safe and it was all good. And then I distinctly remember this one day when I was 13, I was asleep but I was awake. My eyes were open and I was paralyzed in my bed, and I watched as this dark entity came over me, and I couldn't move because I thought I was awake. And that was when I first experienced sleep paralysis. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know that that's what it was, but when I look back now, I know for sure that that's what it was. So I started getting sleep paralysis quite bad, and then still in school, still doing Reiki, still, drinking, smoking, and then sort of fast forward to maybe when I'm like 18, 19, 20, I start doing like tarot, just because when you already are in that sort of path of Reiki and spirituality, you're kind of open to anything that stems from there. So yeah, that can mean anything. So people doing Ouija boards, Reiki, tarot, just energy healing in general. I started doing all of that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then I remember I was living with these girls who I absolutely loved. They were a couple years older than me, and I looked up to them. And they were the ones that got me sort of deeper in it, because they had all these paganism books and like how to be a witch books, and they were dressing in a certain way, and I thought, oh, that looks really cool. Like, show me more about it. I'll get into that. So, I started reading about that, and, I would do spells with them. But at the time, I didn't really ever know what I was doing. I just thought I was doing a little spell from a book. I didn't know that any of that had any significance whatsoever. I thought it was just like a trendy thing to do.
Hmm.
All the while, I'm still having, sleep paralysis, um, and all of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, one question is a question of ignorance, which is, what's the legal drinking age in Australia? I imagine not
No,
13.
it's definitely not 13. It is 18.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah,
a little
so
little bit younger than the US, but a little bit older than maybe Germany. Um,
yeah,
I
exactly.
I
Exactly.
wanted to know too about the sleep paralysis. When you said you kind of saw like a dark entity, did it have any sort of shape or form to it? Like, are you able to describe that at all? And also, like, did you feel a certain kind of way? And I know you said it was ongoing, that experience. So was it like a similar feeling the whole time? Like, was there any sort of physicality of it other than kind of being, is what you said was kind of like you felt kind of pinned to the bed?
So form wise, it was always like a dark form. It didn't take on the shape of a person, but it was kind of just like, yeah, it was formless but formed. It's really hard to explain, but the
Hmm.
feeling that I would get from it was this. I would be very, very scared. I was very scared. Very,
Hmm.
very scared. And what would happen was, the more scared I would get, the scarier it would get. So the closer it would come to me, the more it would paralyze me. And I would try and move my mouth and scream, but it was like it was holding its hand on my mouth, so it would just be muffled, and it felt like I could never escape.
Hmm.
Mm.
And this started around the age of 13. And at that
Yeah.
time, you would taken some classes on like Reiki, which is kind of it's isn't it Reiki is almost like energy healing in a way, like you're moving energy around the body, that sort of thing. I mean, it's
Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
much
yeah,
what it is. It's,
yeah.
it's very involved with, like, the chakras.
Mm,
So, so you like pull up energy from like the source, from the ground, and you pull it up through your chakras, and then you use it, and you don't have to be touching the person. You can just be holding your hands near them.
mm-hmm,
And you can feel it. It's if you feel energy, that's just what it is.
mm-hmm,
Um, so yeah, it was definitely around the same time, but it was also around the same time um of me drinking and smoking and doing drugs, and also having casual sex at a very, very young age
mm,
too. So I feel like all of those things really opened, for me personally, when I look back, I think when I was young and lost my virginity at a very young age, that's when I felt like the door opened to the darkness.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I too lost my virginity at a very young age, and I've traced traced a lot of my own things back to, just kind of a distorted view of like what sex is, sexuality, like those sorts of things. It really, to a mind that's still very young, developing, that can be quite challenging. And I was brought up in more of a Christian household, so I knew it wasn't right, uh, but but yeah, no, I think that's something that I'm still like, kind of working on and growing from, that understanding of how that's, um, in what ways my mind still needs to kind of be renewed. So you're having sleep paralysis until you're in your at least until you're living with some friends at, is this like 18, 19, 20s sort of area?
Yeah, I did during this time as well. I jumped around a lot in the sense of I traveled. So I think I lived in,
Mm,
when I was 18, 19, 20. I lived in London. Um, I did traveling. I came back and then I lived in Melbourne. And yeah, when I lived with these girls and were doing yeah, the witchy stuff, I guess
mm,
you would say, that's when I was probably doing a lot of drugs as well.
mm,
And not just weed, just all of the other ones. Um so yeah, obviously that doesn't help too, really opening myself up. And it's just the way that it was so, I mean, it was for so long for me, like the witchy stuff, the tarot, the paganism. At not one point did I ever think that what I was doing was strange or that it had any hold on me or anyone else. Um which I think is really interesting. And at not one point during this time when I was younger did I ever come across someone who was religious in the sense of maybe Catholic or Christian or any of those. I
mm,
just didn't ever come across anyone.
mm.
So I just didn't.
Um,
I honestly, not that it's Christians. It's not like they have to tell you, but it just the who I surrounded myself in and the world that I was in just wasn't that at all.
yeah, yeah. So you said you kind of moved around for a while, even in living in London at one point. Are you still experiencing sleep paralysis throughout all of your travels, wherever you've gone?
Mm.
And where you're going, are you still experiencing the same kind of shapeless but shaped, sort of entity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it didn't happen every night. Maybe
Sure.
maybe I would only have it once a year, but it would
Mm,
still, maybe it would get worse a couple of times, but it all was the same entity, spirit, um, and it all had the same feeling. Um, yeah, of just, it was just darkness, but it would do different things. Sometimes it would sit on my chest. Sometimes I would be like levitating. Um, it was just different things.
And well, and I know too. You said that it scared you, but it would increasingly get more scary, more intentionally scary. Would that look like, I don't know, if I'm levitating off the bed, that'd be pretty startling, if I didn't know what was going on. So like when you say that it would become more scary, are you saying that it was doing things or that it was appearing to look more scary, or was it just, I don't know, like the hair on the back of your neck stood up a little bit more, or what was that
Oh yeah,
feeling?
the hair on the back of my neck was like all the time. It
Yeah.
was more just the feeling because it got to the point where I would know when it was coming,
Hmm.
which was quite strange because I would be asleep in this mid awake asleep feeling and I would start to feel this like sense of doom. And that's when I would be like, oh no, it's coming. And then the hairs on the back of my neck, it felt like sorry, not the back of my neck, it would feel like from my back up to my head, slowly, prickle by prickle, it would just be like, and this like feeling of just my entire
Hmm.
back in shivers. And I would just want to go like that. And yeah, it would just come over me. And I remember the one time when it was the absolute worst I've ever experienced in my life was when I lived with this woman in the countryside. And it seemed all well and good. I'm in the countryside, nice, lovely place. And she claimed actually outrightly that she was a witch. But I'm pretty sure that she was claiming that she was a dark witch. So, people can claim I'm not really that well versed on it, but most of the time when someone says they're a white witch, it means that they're, manifesting, doing spells, but for goodness. They're not putting, hexes or wishing people bad things to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman that I lived with was claiming that she was doing that. Um, and I sort of didn't think anything of it until she started talking about Ouija boards. And that's when I started to get scared because, yeah, she was asking me if I wanted to do one. She was keen. She was like, "Come on, let's do one." And I was like, "Absolutely not," because of what I had already experienced with the sleep paralysis. I didn't really want to open myself up to more demonic spirits. Um, and this one night when I was at sleeping in the house, she had her house here, and I was living in like a little yeah, sort of, we call it like a bungalow
Hmm.
in Australia, just like a small little like granny flat, one bedroom kitchenette sort of thing. And I felt this impending doom thing that I feel, but I heard something fall in the middle of the night, like something smashed down in my bathroom. And I was so scared, but I wanted to go look at what was it? Like, what, am I crazy? And so I went to go look, and something in the shower had fallen down. So I picked it up and put it back. And I couldn't for the life of me even look in the mirror because I was too scared. Even telling the story, I'm getting shivers. I was too scared that I would see something. And I got back into bed and I was just staring at the door the whole time because I was like, it's coming, it's coming. And something came in, but this time it was like in the form of a man, and it sort of materialized at the door, this darkness, but in the form of a man, and then came onto my bed and then came onto me. And yeah, I don't want to get too graphic, but it felt like it violated me. Um, and it was very, very scary. And um, yeah, I woke up the next morning and I went to talk to her. And the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, did you get visited by that guy last night?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" Like, so scared, still shaking, like haven't slept, freaking out. And she was like, "Yeah, he came into my bed too." And I was just like, "What? Where am I living? What is going on?" Like, that really scared me.
Hmm. When when you are having these experiences, I now I let me separate the experience you just shared with like sleep paralysis like experiences. It sounds like a very, very different experience. Are you able to employ any of the things that you kind of learned from growing up? Like, are you performing like Reiki on yourself, like trying to get some chakra in a good place so that, nothing happens, or using crystals with, certain intentions? Or is your silver angel, is it still with you? Or are you trying to stop these things from happening?
Yes, I would it's funny when I look back at it now, but I was getting sage and putting it all into every corner saying, "Demons, please leave, demons, please." I was talking to another friend who also claimed to be a witch, and she was telling me, "You need to do this, you need to do that." So I was just copying everything that she said, getting sage and saying things and saying spells and asking the demons to leave. But obviously none of that worked. Um, the only thing that ever worked was um, trying to not be scared and using God's name, but in any way, it didn't have to just be God, because back then I didn't ever use the word God. I would say like creator or the truest source. Um, that was the only thing that ever stopped it. So even before that, I think my dad told me to say it once because I was, yeah, freaking out and telling him. And he said, "You need to tell it that you're protected by the source, and that it can't touch you." And then this one day I remember I was really trying to get the words out while I was paralyzed. And it was like just an utter of it, and it just disappeared.
Hmm. Interesting. So you're having these experiences, and I know you said sometimes it'd be, once a year, and then you move in to uh the only term that I know still isn't probably the right term, but I've read enough like Amish fiction where they would call it like a dotty house, like like you said, like a granny flat, like that same sort of idea where like, well, your grandparents can't take care of themselves, so we just move them in close to the house. And um but so you're living there, you're having this horrific experience. But it's interesting. So like I wonder, because this is something that's really fascinating to me with the people who I've interviewed so far, like that they'll have those same sort of feelings where it's like, well, I am willing to do these things. Like crystal's fine, silver angel fine, right? Sage fine, all these things are fine, but then you want me to do a Ouija board, and it's like, no. Well, what is the line there? Or even the idea of, the woman who you're living with saying like, oh, I do dark magic, or I do black magic, or if somebody wants somebody hurt, I am willing to concoct something to make that happen. Those sorts of things, because I've talked to people who said that they were practicing white magic, where it's more like love spells, or these things that still counteract the free will of an individual, right? But they don't consider them to be kind of dark magic because rules. I don't rules that I'm unfamiliar with, but there's some lines or some sort of boundaries that I'm unfamiliar with. So, were you like, what is it specifically, I guess, about the Ouija board that was like, okay, that's a hard no, and also that entity that experienced that horrible experience that you had, did that become frequent? Because it almost seems like the woman that you were living next to, almost seems like she was very, very welcoming of that experience.
Oh, yeah. So, with the Ouija board, the reason why I draw the line on that is because I personally have never been visited by a friendly ghost or spoken to, a past family member. The only experiences I've ever had is with darkness. So, when I think of a Ouija board, and because of the movies I've seen and just talking to, that lady and other people before, when I think of the Ouija board, I directly correlate it to a evil spirit. So me doing the Ouija makes me just feel like I'm going to invite that evil spirit into my house further when it's already there, but it feels like it's just opening it up further.
Yeah. So, and then that encounter you had with that entity, was that first and last? Was that ultimately ongoing? I mean, I guess I don't know how long you stayed in the granny flat, but
Not long, I can tell you that.
yeah, I can imagine. I can't imagine, but I can
No.
imagine.
Um, no, so that was the only one experience with that particular thing. And I was very afraid after that because of other things that she was saying and doing too. It was clear that she was doing spells or something against me because I
Mm.
would I just knew I had a really dark feeling inside of me about her. And I still kind of do. But yeah, that was the one time I had that experience. And then I think it must have been like a week later or maybe even a couple of days later, I could not sleep alone. So I asked my friend to stay over the night. And I thought, oh yeah, my friend's here, nothing's going to happen. In the middle of the night, I was awake because I was scared. A book from my bookshelf that was just near my bed just flew off and hit the floor. And the person, my friend that was asleep, they were just like, oh yeah, something fell, just keep sleeping. But me, I was just staring. There's no way that that's just happened.
Um, a question actually, I just came to my mind. So we had briefly touched on Reiki and how there's, chakras involved, and it's moving energy, and you had commented and said like it is real, like you do really feel the energy. I'm curious, what does that feel like when like to know that there's some sort of energy that you're kind of moving or manipulating?
Mm. The only reason why I can say I can describe it to something similar, obviously they're different, but it's a similar feeling like because I've gone to church now and when I have my hands open like this and I can feel all the energy of the people in the room and the worshiping, I can feel sort of tingles and vibrations in my hands and throughout my whole body. So it's like a vibrating, tingling experience. And when you do things like Reiki, meditation, that's a thing that they say all the time. If you experience tingling and vibration, like that's normal. That's the energy working through you.
Hmm.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay. So you're having people stay with you because you're not comfortable in that that location by yourself. I unfortunately I think you probably picked like the worst, almost like Scooby-Doo sort of like, just ignore it, like no problem. A book fell, books fall. That's how that works somehow tonight while we're sleeping, like go back to bed. Seems like the worst advice, but here you are with a friend who's like, don't worry about it. So what uh, what happens after that? Where I mean, I know you, like you said, you didn't stay there for very long, so ultimately you moved, and even indicated kind of you feel like that woman is still basically doing what she's been doing as well, right? Like still kind of practicing.
Yeah, for sure. I remember she sent me a text and she was saying that she was inside my room, and I just straight away I was like, "Nah. Like, why are you in my room? What are you doing in there?" I just felt a darkness, so I moved out, and then I moved to one of my friends' houses, to a family house. So there was like lots of sisters in there, the mum and the dad, where I felt very safe. And they were all very tarot, spiritual, healing vibes as well. Um, so they absolutely affirmed what had happened. And they were telling me that I should go to an energy healer, and they had all the numbers for the energy healers. So they
Mhm.
were referring me to other energy healers to heal this person's spirit off me, or this entity that's attached to me. Because when I got to their house, it followed me there as well. It happened a couple of times in different ways. This time it felt like it was sort of like strangling me on the back of my head. Um, and I told them about that, and they said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, there's something there." And then I would contact one of their friends who was an energy healer, and they would say, "Oh, I looked into your energy, and I can't heal what there is attached to you. I need to refer you to this other energy healer." So
Hmm.
that freaked me out even more. I'm
Hmm.
thinking, what do you mean? You're saying that you're an energy healer and you can't heal what's on me? Like, what are you saying? So then I spoke to this other lady. So I was just getting handed around different energy healers putting their energy on me.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and real
yeah.
quick to clarify, so when you're saying the entity followed you, are you talking about the entity from when you were 13 or the entity from this woman's house?
I'm thinking it's this woman's house. Like, it really felt
Hmm.
like there was something over me. I just felt a bit not quite right for a while there. And then these other healers were just affirming that, which scared me even more.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm trying to be very mindful to not be too graphic, but if that entity was violating in a very uncomfortable way, to put it extremely lightly, I mean, I think we recognize in Christianity kind of this very physical idea of like two become one flesh, this sort of idea,
Mm.
right? And so when we allow things to, and I know allow may indicate some sort of like acceptance, but clearly seems like you were not willing to let anything happen, but it did happen. You know, it I could see how that would kind of create this sort of bond, whether or not you wanted it, between you and this sort of entity where it's like, well, I've been given access, and so now there's very little little you can do on your own, and unfortunately now here you're living with people who are very spiritual, who have all the crystals and all the tarot and all the sage and all that, and they're like, but we can't do anything about it, and so they're like, but here's a business card. It's almost like it almost kind of reminds me of like an 80s montage of like, here's a business card you call, they can't help, so then they smack another one down and you call, you can't help, and smack, and like more business cards. It's like, who do I call at this point? So what and of course not trying to make light of it, but it's just this like reflecting on it, it's almost like where do you turn at that point? So you've reached out to all of these energy healers, and I mean, and I also think it's interesting too, because again, you having that own foundation, that foundation yourself of being an energy healer with Reiki, right? um for someone to say, I don't know what you got, but I can't do anything about it, must be a pretty defeating feeling.
Oh yeah, it was. And then yeah, it really freaked me out even more. I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I okay?
Mm.
um, but I ended up finding this one who did do something, she claims. I don't know. I didn't feel anything. We spoke on the phone and she said that she was healing my energy. Um, and then they referred me to this other woman because they all spoke to her on the phone, who does like past life regressions, and this
Mm.
is very popular within that community as well. Um, so then I paid this woman to take me through one of those. Um, so then I was just listening to all these things about my apparent past lives that I'd lived, and then she was connecting it to my future lives and also healing me. So I just kept throwing myself into more, I don't know, just because that's what was around me, just into it was like a new door of the spirituality kind of opened, and it's like, okay, well then I was doing Reiki and now I'm doing past lives regressions and then now I'm doing this, and it's just kind of felt like it was never ending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I know earlier you'd mentioned, you're experiencing all of these things and you're very interested in these types of healings and spirituality and things like that, but really Christianity doesn't come up, in any of that. And so in a sense there is almost a natural progression of, well, if I can't heal myself, and if somebody else can't heal myself, and then finally I find someone who who can clean, the energy, or do whatever it is that they have to do, now we have to kind of go a step farther, right? And so now it's like, well, what about the energy from your past lives and from your future lives? And I'm sure that it's, I mean, like you said, kind of reflecting on it now, it seems kind of wild, but I mean, I know how it is just being a human, and you go through life and you try to connect the dots in a lot of ways. And so when somebody says, "Well, here's the next dot," and you go, "Well, they must know better than I do, so clearly that's the next dot," then of course that's the direction that you go.
Yeah, literally. That you're like, why am I like this? They say, oh, it's because in a past life you did X, Y, and Z. So we got to clear that so that in this life, so like you said, you just go, okay. Um, and then I ended up moving away anyway from that house. And um I lived in then I moved to Canada, which was actually quite healing because it was a little bit less of the spiritualness, but then I fell down another um sort of spiritual thing where I started going into frequency healing. And I got this device called a Healy, and it would send frequencies through your body and through your environment. So I got really into that for a bit there, and I stopped drinking at that time, but I was still getting sleep paralysis. But it was getting easier and easier to sort of tell the sleep paralysis demon to go away or to know that it was coming and say like, no, not today. Um, and then yeah, so I was doing the frequency healing, and then it was sort of less the witchy pagany sort of stuff kind of went a little bit less, and it was more manifesting, like trying to get my frequency to a certain level, and praying to the universe, and stuff like that, which I liked for a little bit because I thought, okay, I'm feeling a bit better now. It's
Mhm.
journaling and doing all of that, it felt like it was getting a little bit better until I fully went down the tarot thing again because I took a tarot course and I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a tarot reader because other people around me were saying, oh, you're really good at looking into people's lives and, you're good at this, you're good at that. So I thought, okay, they're all saying that I'm good at it. So that's when I started fully doing tarot and I started a business and a TikTok. And on my TikToks, some of them I would get 300,000 views and people are all saying, "Yeah, that's exactly what's going on." And honestly, every day I would wake up, open TikTok, scroll and see other people's tarot readings. And so I'd be taking them in and then I'd do tarot for myself and then I'd film a tarot. So then my whole brain ended up just being tarot. Um, and I kind of feel like I went into a spiritual psychosis because I was always trying to receive a message. So I'd be walking around, I'd go for a walk and I'd say, universe, what message do I need to receive about this? What message? Show me a certain number, show me 777 if that's what it is, and a number plate will go past or a house number. So I started going insane because I'd be on these walks and I'd be adding number plates together. Like the numbers on a number plate. Okay, that equals 9. And what does 9 mean? 9 is the end of a cycle. And then I'd see a house number and add that together. And then so I was just constantly being bombarded with these messages from the universe. And that got really stressful.
Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine when you're I mean, I think there's one element of like saying, okay, I want to know what's out there. I want to know like what do you have for me? And there's maybe I would say like a more like juvenile way of approaching it to say like, oh, what will you have for me today, universe? And then something shows up at like a neon sign or something. Oh, okay, I guess I got to go in there. It's open. But then I think the difference is, and I think what you're talking about, from what I'm understanding is now it's not. I'm not going to get that neon sign, but I am going to try and find within anything in my surroundings ways to make sense to put this puzzle together that must exist because I've asked for it and I'm expecting it. And so if I'm not looking in the right way for the answer, then I'm missing it, like I'm doing something wrong almost, or I have somehow missed, the universe's message. It puts a lot of responsibility. Like you said, it kind of crushes your mind in a lot of ways where it's like, what can I do to find this? Like you said, 9 is an end of a cycle, 6 is man's number, like all the numerology, these sorts of things where it's like, oh, well, there's a 3 there and a 3 there. And okay, if I carry the 1 and I, like, it's like you almost have to be like a mathematician spiritualist at the same time,
That's literally what it was like. It's like, okay, yep, 333 means this, but that wasn't 333, so I'm going to find a way to make it that.
Mhm.
So I felt like I was going a little bit crazy, and I also found it really hard because people were, paying me for tarot, and they would ask really in-depth things and tell me really in-depth things about their lives, about, I'm with this man and he did this and is he my forever person and will I get the job? And after a while, I just thought, why do these random people trust me with things that are so important to them? And it started to not sit right. And actually, just before I started to feel that it didn't sit right, and I'm sure that this has a correlation, I know it to be true now, but I met this guy online and he was a Christian. And he was the one that said, just so sweetly, not in a forceful way, but he said, "Oh, do you do tarot?" Um, and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, I love it. Do you want me to do tarot? Do you want me to pull a card for you? And he was like, "Oh, no, I actually don't believe in that." And I was like, huh? I'd literally never heard anyone say those words to me before.
Hmm.
You don't believe in it? What do you mean? He was like, well, it's not that I don't think it's real. I think it's real, but I actually think it's really demonic. And then when he said that, I thought, well, he can't be that far from the truth, because my whole life I've been experiencing kind of like a demonic entity meeting me in my sleep. So he's not that far from the truth. Maybe I should listen to what he's saying. And he didn't really say anything else about it, but he did pray over me. And he prayed over me and my house and my family and my health. And I just thought, that's strange. My entire life, I've been in this energy healing spiritual world of Reiki, but no one's ever actually said any of the words that he said to me before. They've wished me well with their energy, apparently, but no one's actually said that they want love spread over my house, that they want protection over my house. Yeah, so when he prayed for me, like, in that way, I just, yeah, slowly things started to shift, I think, because I started to realize, oh, okay. And then I started praying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I know you said you had a presence on TikTok for the tarot readings. Did you ever receive any sort of pushback in the comments, or were your comments very highly filtered where you didn't see anything like that?
No, everyone was writing 777, those are my numbers, yes. And because I would be saying things in the reading that were, somewhat specific, but also not. You can, if I'm saying in a reading that you're going through a breakup, obviously a quarter of the people are probably going through a breakup, and then they will be the ones that are commenting saying, oh my gosh, yeah, everything that you're saying is everything that I'm going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that's really telling and fascinating to me is that humans by nature want to make sense of things. And we will find literally the next most knowing person that we assume is the most knowing to reach out for information for. Like you're saying, like, why are you asking me for readings? Like, I don't know who you are. I don't, that's a lot of responsibility to let me know if you're going to get the job or not. But they have put you in that, on that pedestal effectively of saying, well, this is what you do and this is what you know, and so you're going to have the answer, I actually find some parallels to that even with modern day Christianity, in the same way that there are some people that will put pastors on a pedestal, where it's like, oh well, let's ask the pastor, he'll know, when really nothing in the Bible says that the pastor is the one who's responsible for everything. It's like, no, we all should be responsible for our growth and everything like that, and if we get too far out, then yeah, the pastor, like a shepherd, will, okay, hold on, let's keep it together here. But it's interesting that almost, I guess what I find interesting is, yes, it's this very hyper spiritual sort of approach. You believe that the cards are shuffled in a very intentional way, and that what's revealed is very intentional, and the sage, you believe that it has intent, and like there's all these things where it's like, well, these all work, and we say it's a very spiritual thing, and sage, and all that is very spiritual in a lot of ways to people, but in my mind, I'm like, but this is also very human. It's like just such a human thing to do. And I think the most interesting thing is when you're saying that you are feeling energy, and even now when you're attending church and you're saying, I'm still feeling vibration and energy and things like that, it makes me think that what you were tuned into and what you were tapped into, and even now what you may be tuned into, um although I guess now would be different, so let me kind of draw a line there, is yes, you were experiencing something real, but it wasn't the real creator, it wasn't the real power, it wasn't the real as your parents kind of put it, the real source. And I don't have any qualm with saying that, God, Yahweh, is the source of it all, right? And so we can learn so much from looking at stars, we can learn so much from energies and vibrations, we can learn so much of it, but all of that information is exceptionally human, and is extremely dicey if we don't understand who's created it and for what purpose. And I think that that's the interesting thing is then when you meet a Christian who's like, oh yeah, all that stuff, demonic. And you're like, wait a second, what? What do you mean? And then he's like, actually, not only is it demonic, let me pray for you. Let me pray for your family. Let me pray for where you live. And it's like, well, why would you do that? And why, when you're doing it, are you praying the way that you're praying? Because like you said, the best that we can hope for one another is well wishes. I hope you don't get hit by a bus. That's a very kind thing of you to say. Thank you for that. I hope I don't either. Let's move on with our day, right? But he's like, hold on a second. I don't want your house to be filled with love, but I want it to be filled with God's love. And there's a nuance to that and a difference to that you may not have encountered up until that point. So I know you'd said then, after he had prayed for you and prayed for where you were living and all that, you said things started to kind of shift. What does that shift look like?
Yeah, so he made me want to start praying. So then I started praying to God, but I still not once did I think about Christianity. I just was like, oh, I'm changing the word because my whole life I've spoken to the universe, like universe this, universe that. So for me, it was quite easy, even though I'm aware now that it's two completely different things. But in my mind, it seemed like an easy change up. I'm like, oh, it's just a different word. I'll just pray to God now. So I was doing that, and I also was enrolled in another course at the time that was teaching me how to take someone else through a past life regression. And that's when that guy was like, I don't know about that. And I was thinking, oh, that's weird, because like my dad said that would be cool, and my mum said it would be cool, and everyone else said it would be cool. You're the only one that's saying it's not cool. Why is it not cool? And he was sort of like, yeah, you don't need to mess with that. It's not necessary. And I was like, okay. And then things started happening around me. Like I remember I sort of messaged the girl of the course who was, meant to be this, she studied Buddhism and was meant to, preach love and whatnot. And I told her that I was thinking about quitting, and she completely turned on me in the darkest way. I was actually taken aback. She was like, it was actually really scary. She was like, you signed a contract. You're meant to be in this course. And I was like, well, I've changed my mind. And then she was sort of saying that she knew that I would do this. She knew that I was going to ruin everything. And it kind of went down this big thing. And I was like, but wait, aren't you like a Buddhist? Aren't you meant to be nice and just understand that maybe this isn't my path? So that made me believe what he was saying more. And then other things just randomly started happening, like around my house. Like the day that I think I told her about it, I was eating dinner, my dinner plate, and I was just cutting into it, and the dinner plate just shattered underneath me. And I just thought, that's literally never happened to me before. And I told this guy about it, and he said, oh yeah, you're being spiritually attacked. And I was like, huh? No one's ever even used that word before, even though my whole life I've been spiritually attacked. No one's ever said those words. And I just thought, oh my gosh, you're right. I actually am getting spiritually attacked. And then, I was doing more tarot still. And I was home alone this one day. And my dog started just barking at nothing. And I started to get this feeling in my chest. And I was like, oh no, it's like something's coming. I can feel it. The dog's bark. Like, why is the dog barking? And I started to really, really freak out. And I got pushed outside of my house because I couldn't be in the house. I felt unsafe, that there was something in there watching me. So I was like having a panic attack out the front of the house, calling a friend, being like, can you come over? Like I can't even get in the car. I can't drive. I'm freaking out. And I ended up speaking on the phone with them, and they calmed me down a bit. But yeah, during that time, I was just, any noise, anything, I was just very, very on edge. And then I ended up getting sick for maybe 2 weeks. And it was sick in the sense of there was nothing really wrong with me. I just couldn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. Like I was forcibly late, like I had to be horizontal. And I thought, this is weird. This has never happened to me before. Can't do anything. I couldn't eat. So I was like involuntarily fasting. And then when I got better, I think like one of the first days I went for a walk and I just felt different. I don't know. I just had this weird sort of, it was like I had a different shade of glasses on and I was looking at the world and everything just felt different. And I went to try and go near my tarot cards and I just couldn't. Like something was just like, no, you can't. That's done now. And yeah, I literally haven't touched them ever since then because I feel convicted by the fact that like all of these things happened, and maybe God was coming into my life. I was praying for help. This guy was praying for me. And it's like I was forced out of tarot because I literally felt sick to even touch it or go near it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a story, it's a narrative, I guess I'll say, that I'm really picking up on with a lot of people who I've interviewed is the idea of saying like actually that my whole life I've been under spiritual attack. Well, it's never really an attack until you say no. And until you say wait, until you say I have a question, until you say actually I don't think I'm interested in this past life regression course, then all of a sudden you see it's like the light gets shown right on it, right? It's like now you see it for what it is, because a simple no problem, have a good day, right, might have skewed your course completely, but instead all these, whatever, I just call them unclean spirits because that's the New Testament calls them unclean spirits. And I think that that's completely apropos, right? All these unclean spirits who like to masquerade around as very clear, clean and loving, right? But the moment you say no, all of a sudden that love fades away really quick and you get to see them for the mess that they are and the mess that they've created for you. And even this idea of like, I haven't been sick like this and like ever, and this isn't normal and this doesn't make sense. And it's like, yeah, because everything that they've been doing to kind of keep you coasting, keep you moving in the direction that they want you to move. Well, when you say no, then all they're going to do is try to embitter themselves in ways in your life that they've been slowly kind of getting their fingers on, like parts of you, where you live, how you behave, like all these things. Like it's, there's no comfortable way, I think, to think about like this, like what part of my brain do they own, or what part of my body do they control, or what part of me have they laid their hands on where I've said, please, by all means, but then all of a sudden you say no. And like you said, things start to shift, and it's literally all of the places where they've had hold on you, all of a sudden they start to recede, right? And so everything does change. And I love that you comment on like, after the sickness is over, I go out for a walk and it's like I'm seeing something I've never seen before, right? I mean, it is everything that you've ever seen, but it's new. And that's because you're no longer under kind of that that umbrella, that you're not under that, that veil anymore. And that's not to say that that's what salvation looks like necessarily, but that is to say that when you say no to something that has had free reign over your life for, over a decade at that point, well, they don't like that. They don't want to move. They don't want to leave, right? And even like your past life regression coach or teacher, or, however she calls herself, I really like that what you said is, her things like, you signed a contract. You signed a contract, but you don't realize you didn't only sign one. You signed a lot of them, and unclean spirits function in a very, very legalistic way. And so when you allow things, when you open the door, it's like, I only want goodness and light. And it's like, well, I can be goodness and light for a little bit for you, but you're welcoming me in. That's a contract. When you put intent into tarot and into crystals and all that, like those are contracts that you've signed without maybe reading the fine print, like in Willy Wonka. It's like, well, you did not read the fine print. It's like, well, I didn't know that it, it may not have even been offered to you in that way. But I love that all of a sudden you go through kind of a few weeks of absolute chaos. Things are really starting to shift, like you said, and then you go for that walk and all of a sudden things look different. Things feel different around you. And at this point, are you still reaching out to the gentleman who's like been praying for you? Because like you said too, and I don't want to overlook the fact that you said you had started praying as well. And not only have you started praying, but who you're praying to, right, has been more guided. And I think that that's also very interesting as well, where it's like, well, wait, the moment you acknowledge that there is a God and that God isn't in the Reiki and isn't in the past life regression and isn't in the crystals and isn't in the silver angel and isn't in all these things that you had kind of built your life up around, all of a sudden they're like angry, annoyed, very, very upset. And it reacts in your body in a very violent way,
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny actually because I ended up losing a bit of weight as well. Like it's like I quite literally was carrying weight. And this is like I didn't say this, but everything I've talked about, we've taken it up to last year now. So that's when that all happened, was last year. So we're talking around, like May or something like that. That's when I fully stopped tarot, fully stopped all that stuff. I started to, every night I was praying to God before I went to sleep, every night. So still wasn't thinking about Christianity, but was praying, asking for help, and whatnot. I was still drinking quite a bit. I wasn't really doing any drugs. I was trying to smoke weed, but when I would smoke it, it would make me feel very, very anxious. Like it just didn't have the same effect. So that was kind of easy for me to stop. Because like I said, I was praying to God to ask. Now when I can look back at it, it's easy to see like he was removing thing by thing in my life so I could come fully to him. I can say that now, but at the time I'm thinking, I just want to smoke weed. Why is this not working? Like, I just want to do the thing I usually do that usually makes me feel good inside. And now it's making me feel anxious. What's going on? And then everything was pretty good. I was like, oh yeah, life's great. But then I was like, there's just it sort of comes up to this year. I went over to England to travel. I had a partner. Seems like everything was all good. And then got to about June, July of this year. And I was just like, something's just not quite right. I'm praying. I'm healthy. I'm not drinking. I've quit drinking fully by this point. I stopped drinking in January, so completely sober. And I think that's what even made it harder, was like, okay, something really, I have no guise anymore. I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing any drugs. What else do I have to do? Because something still isn't fitting. I've got a boyfriend, he's lovely. There's nothing wrong, but why does everything still feel wrong? And similarly to what happened last year, happened to me again this year in August, September, where I moved again because I thought that would help, run to a new place. Maybe that's what I need to find myself. And I moved to this place and I couldn't get out of bed for 2 weeks and I was bawling my eyes out. And this time, I'm sure it was the first time ever, I prayed to God and I said directly to him, please help me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I am. I'm so sick of running. I'm so sick of being alone and doing it all alone. Please, can you come into my life? And that's when I just felt this, I felt this overwhelming sense of his presence. And I was praying and I was saying, like, where's my family? Why am I so alone? Why do I feel so alone? And I just felt really God come to me at that time. And that's when he said, it is time. You know what to do. Church is just up the road. Buy a Bible. And I did, as I was in tears on my phone, in tears, crying, still like, oh, trying to find a Bible. And I bought one. And the moment it came, I've never felt so excited. Who's so excited about a book? It's just like, whatever, it's a book. I don't know anything about it. And I got it and I just felt like this. It sounds really cheesy, but like this sigh of relief that, like, I've tried all of these things. I know this is going to be the last one. I felt it in my soul. Like, you don't need to try anymore. Like, this is it. And then I started reading the New Testament and I could not for the life of me get through a single verse or chapter without bawling my eyes out. The Bible was just tears at this point because I just couldn't. It's like everything that was just trapped in me kind of just came out. And I couldn't believe the words that I was reading. It just felt like everything that I was reading was relating to me. I'm thinking, how? This book is so old. How is it how is it relating to me in any way? How? And then I got even more upset. How did I not find it sooner? Why did I think all of these things? And then that was about September. And then I just knew after reading the Bible maybe for 3 weeks or something, I was just like, oh, obviously I'm a Christian because I believe that Jesus he is Lord. Like, I'm going to follow him now. The way, the truth, and the life. Yeah.
So you've been a Christian for a little over a month. We're in literally smack dab in the middle of November at the time of this recording. Um, so Jesus is Lord. I kind of want to walk back a little bit to that moment of like the tears and receiving a Bible and things like that. Just so you know, I've been a Christian a little bit more than a month, a little bit more, a couple decades, we'll say. And I'll tell you that even now, and most of the way that I consume the Bible is through the audiobook. I'm listening to it being read to me, or I'm studying, that sort of thing. And even now, I am still brought to tears because the goodness of God is not for a moment, but is for an eternity. And I think that, I know we kind of talked about it a little bit pre-roll, but this idea of like God's goodness, but also God's conviction being such a humbling and beautiful thing, right? Like that idea of like, why didn't I hear about this sooner? And I've been a Christian for a long time, but it's like, why haven't I followed this better? Why haven't I made this decision sooner? Why haven't I done this? Like, you're right here. I see you. I'm learning about who you are, right? And even now, it's just the most beautiful and heartbreaking in the best way, life that I could ever want for anyone. And so I hope that in month 2, in year 2, in decade 2, in whatever 2 that you end up working yourself to in your walk, that those tears don't stop and that conviction doesn't stop. And one thing that I think is really, I would say, cheeky about God and his nature is the fact that he chastises those that he loves, right? And so the reason I say that is like this idea of conviction where he's like, stop it. It's like, but I'm telling you, stop it because I love you. And it's such a beautiful thing, and to have a God who is above the universe, right? Who is above time, who is above numerology, is above Reiki, is above all of these things. Like this God who is above all of those things, for whatever reason, says, Holly, stop it. Come to me. Wait, what? How? Why? And for me too, Matthew, stop it. Come to me. And for anyone listening, and God says, stop it, come to me. It's like the conviction is amazing, because it doesn't tell us to just stop, but it says stop and come to me. Like, I want a better relationship with you, and why? What what an amazing tear-inducing mystery that I can't get enough of, and I think that that's awesome. And so you have been a Christian, and I actually love it. And for those listening, Holly has been documenting literally almost every day, if not every day, since she's become a Christian, officially, air quotes thrown very high here, since she's become a Christian, on TikTok specifically. That's actually where I found you. And I'll ask for you to share your information here in a little bit, but um what at this moment, what are you learning? Like, what is this new relationship like for you?
It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because obviously upon hearing my story, you can tell that I was giving my energy and signing a lot of contracts left, right, and center. And I didn't say this, but um, just also having the sleep paralysis, I was also having nightmares too of me running, always running. And I don't have that anymore, because
Mm.
I'm not running from him. I feel like that's what it was this entire time. I was so exhausted, moving here, moving there in my waking and sleeping life. And now it just feels like I don't need to run anymore. And I have this relationship now just with him. I'm giving everything to him and he's taking it, rather than going, okay, I need to check the tarot for this. I need to check this, the numerology on that. I need to check where the moon is, where the stars are. No, I just ask him now. So the relationship, I feel so much more at ease just in that sense, because I'm just speaking to the one. It goes above all else. Like, I don't need to do this weird ones in the middle. It's like, no, just go straight to the top and he will give you the answer straight away. I always was obviously you probably hear and think, of course, that's why you were like that. But I had problems just making just small decisions. And you think now, no wonder, because I was, putting so much energy everywhere. But now it's like I ask God and I know straight away. And like you said before about feeling convicted, straight away it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not what he wants for me.
Mhm.
And that's sort of what led me to actually documenting my my journey, because I kept praying to him, saying, I need friends, I need family, but I don't really know how to, because I live in a really beautiful area, but a lot of people are out drinking, and I really don't even want to go to a bar at this point, So I'm thinking, how am I going to meet people? How am I going to meet people? And I don't know. He just told me, like, just put up a video. Go on. And I remember praying before, I'm like, if no one sees this, I'm going to take it down. I'm going to delete everything and I'm not going to post about it ever again, but I will do it just this one time. And I did it. And it reached a lot of people weirdly in my area. So I'm getting messages from people that live near me. No, I would have been able to meet them just randomly. Like, they're all messaging me saying, hey, come to this church. Hey, come to that church. So I did. It felt like a true sign, like I prayed and said, if this isn't going to reach anyone, then it's obviously not what I'm meant to do. But he doubled down on that one.
Mhm.
um,
He's sure
yeah,
has a funny way of that, doesn't he?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, I know you're working your way through the New Testament. Sounds like you have a church or several churches as options to be in attendance to. I guess the last thing that I'm curious about is the gentleman who had prayed for you. Are you still in contact with him?
I actually am not. He's been blocked for a little while there.
Ah, I see. Unfortunate.
Unfortunate, but I never actually met him in person either, but maybe one day.
Okay.
Maybe one day our paths will cross.
I see. I guess I just assumed maybe you'd met him in person. That's why I was like, oh, maybe he'd prayed for you in that way, but I see. All right. Well, Holly, I sincerely appreciate your willingness to come on to Martyria to share your testimony. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a beautiful, warm, sunny November, which feels very gross for me to say because it snowed where I am, and but that's perfectly fine. And I know I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but you are in fact documenting your journey in Christianity, which I think is excellent. There's this beautiful mindset of the Israelites where we move forward in time by walking backward, like looking backward while we walk forward. And it's this idea, and when you do ultimately get into the Old Testament, the overarching message of the Old Testament is God saying, remember, turn to me and remember, find your rest in me, like you're talking about even now with Jesus. It's like, I feel rest, I feel peace, I feel these things that I haven't felt before, because as God draws us farther, things don't necessarily get simpler, but his message remains the same. Remember what I've brought you through. Remember who I am, what I mean for you. Look to me, find your rest in me, and carry on the rest of your days that way, right? So I am so excited to continue to watch your journey as you continue to document it for as long as God is encouraging you to do so. Now, if anybody is interested from literally watching from day one the journey of a brand new believer, where can they go to see that?
So I'm on TikTok and Instagram, both the same handle. So it's at Holly Brazil Knowles. So Holly, HOLLY BRAZILKNOWLES. That's just my full name. Message me if you ever want to. People always message me, and it's great because before my journey with Christ, I actually had no friends. So I encourage people to reach out to me, tell me their stories so that we can connect.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you being on Martyria.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great.